When did you start studying for the NPTE? What tools do you recommend? What was your score? Are you going to miss most about PT school? What kind of professional development will your pelvic PT residency have? Tips to be better at small talk with patients during clinicals. Do you have any regrets from PT school? Hey guys, it's Kristen. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I am a new grad physical therapist. As of literally like not even 3 weeks ago, I just graduated from Mercer University in Atlanta, Georgia this May, and I will be starting my new grad pelvic health residency this summer. But if you are new to my channel, you should totally subscribe and check out my old videos as well, because I have been vlogging since my very first day of PT school. So I quite literally have my whole journey documented here on my channel. Today I thought I would sit down and film a Q&A because a lot of things have happened like in the past month or so. So I figured I would just sit down and chat with you guys. Also, peep the new sweatshirt. It is from my brother and his girlfriend as a graduation gift. I believe it's from Etsy, but it's just this gray crew neck, and then it says DPT, Dr. Nicolosi, and I absolutely love it. It's a size large, so it's really big and cozy, but I thought it was fitting to wear in this video. So, got my phone out here, and you should totally follow me on Instagram. It is kristen.nicolosi, and that is usually where I ask for questions for Q&As. So if you want to be featured in an upcoming one, definitely follow me on there. And I also do sometimes ask on my community tab as well, just to make sure everyone who wants to ask a question has the opportunity to see them. So got the questions here, and let's get started. The first question I'm going to answer is from my best friend Delaney. It said, how is having Austin as a roommate? If you didn't know, my boyfriend Austin and I recently moved in together. We moved to Philadelphia and we have our first apartment together, which I have gotten some requests for an apartment tour. I will be doing that. It is almost done, but it's not 100% done yet. So once it is done, I will for sure do one. But living together has been so fun so far. It's only been a few weeks, but it's a lot of me wanting to take out for dinner and him trying to convince me to eat all the groceries in the fridge. But overall, it is going well. He does work full time, so he's not here a lot of the times during the day, like right now, at least until I start my job at the end of June. My first day is June 26th. Some of y'all were asking that, but it's a little boring during the days when he's gone, but it's fun when he's here at night. We've been exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and we are going to the Jersey Shore this weekend for Memorial Day, and he's never been to the New Jersey beaches, so I'm really excited to show him those. And one of my other best friends from PT school, Abby, said, what are you going to miss most about PT school? I definitely am going to miss all of my professors and friends in my program. My school was based in Atlanta, and most all my classmates are like staying in Atlanta for post-grad and working and stuff, so I'm not gonna see them except for like when I go visit, because I did move back to Philadelphia, which is where my family's from, so I definitely am going to miss seeing them every day. I absolutely loved my program, loved the professors, could not recommend Mercer University more for PT school. So that's definitely what I'm going to miss the most. Someone else said, what kind of professional development will your pelvic PT residency have? So if you didn't watch my video kind of talking about my job and new grad plans, you can look here, but I am doing a women's health residency, and I believe there's only like 9 or 10 in the entire country, so it's not like a super common sort of program. I'm doing the Good Shepherd Penn Partners residency in Philadelphia. We get it, Kristen, you moved to Philadelphia. But basically, I think what you're asking about professional development is like, how will it sort of like advance your career sort of thing. But it is a 1-year program starting in October. I'll start working in June, the end of June, but not doing any residency stuff, just sort of working as a typical therapist. And then starting in October, I'll have 4-month modules. Yeah, 3 4-month modules to total a year. So the first module is like my orthopedic section. So for those 4 months, I'll be treating only like spine, hip, SIJ patients, so kind of staying in that pelvic floor region. And I'll get, I believe it's 5 hours of mentoring each week for sort of like more complex patient cases, with my mentor directly there kind of watching me through my eval, through my treatment session, helping me in that way. And then I also have like readings, modules, study materials to do on my own time. And then after those 4 months, it's a similar thing for pelvic floor. I'll have 4 months of my pelvic rotation, those hours with a mentor each week, doing my modules to learn more skills. and then I have 4 months of lymphedema. And before the lymphedema like pillar, me and the other resident, there's 2 of us, we will take the Norton lymphedema course, so I will be a certified lymphedema therapist and then be able to totally treat lymph patients sort of on my own, and then again having that mentoring for the more complex patients. So I absolutely am so excited. I think it's going to make me like super well-rounded, and it's a good way to kind of like still be a student in a way, like I'm not completely on my own, and I think it'll be a really good way to grow my skills. I also will be shadowing like doctors and surgeries and stuff like that related to like women's health, OBGYN, Urogyne, stuff like that. So I'm excited to see that portion of the residency too. And then after the year-long residency, I can sit for my WCS, which is my Women's Clinical Specialization Certification. I guess I can answer sort of a related question now because it is related. Someone said, how did you go about finding your residency? So like I said, I knew I wanted to do pelvic floor. That truly is where my heart lies. So I just looked at the few that are available. I'll link in the description if I can find it. On the APTA website, there's like a list of all the like different residency programs out there, and there's residencies for like everything. Ortho is huge. There are so many ortho residencies. So if that is your jam and you want to further your skills in ortho, you have way more options. But if you're interested in something sort of more niche like pelvic floor, women's health, I believe there's only 10 residencies. I have been living in Georgia for the past 7 years, which is 12 hours away from my family. There's no pelvic PT residencies in the state of Georgia. Plus, I knew I wanted to sort of move closer to home. So that personally limited me to really 2 residencies. There's one in Pittsburgh, which I was considering because that's only a few hours away, and there's one in Philadelphia. But ultimately, I only applied to this one residency because if I didn't get accepted to this one residency, I would have preferred to find a job that sort of offered good mentorship and that would still allow me to grow. I really didn't want to move anywhere else. Another thing to consider is salary. Residencies are so confusing and every residency is different. Some of them require you to pay tuition, some don't. Mine does not. Some of them take a pay cut, like say they'll pay you 60% of what a normal PT makes or 80% of what a normal PT makes. So that's also something to consider. My residency personally just pays me like they would any other employee. So that was something that was really, I guess, kind of drew me in because I'm like, I'm getting all of this mentorship, all of this learning, all of these opportunities. And in my mind, I don't really see a downside to it because I am making the same salary as a new grad physical therapist would be making, and I have all these incredible learning opportunities presented in front of me. So I really would just do your own research. There's a lot out there that isn't true about residencies. Like some people think every single resident doesn't make as much as a normal PT makes, and that's just not true. And you also need to just kind of research on your own, find out the information for yourself, and then make an informed decision about whether you want to do a residency. Someone said, any and all suggestions for the NPTE? NPTE Final Frontier, y'all. I have a 10% off, or I think it's $10 off coupon code. I'll have it on the screen here, but I could not recommend Final Frontier more. Someone said, would you recommend visiting PT schools before you apply? If they are close geographically to you, I definitely would. I toured a bunch of the schools in Philadelphia, toured a few schools in Atlanta because when I was in college, I was very close to Atlanta. So it was easy for me to tour the schools that I was considering. So if it is easy, definitely do, just to get sort of a feel of the program and if you want to apply there or not, because applications are a lot of work and they're expensive. So if you can, do it. If it is far away, say you're applying to a school on the other side of the country, I don't think you need to fly there and tour like beforehand. See if they have like a Zoom sort of like Q&A session. I know some schools do that. If not, I say just apply if you think that is a serious program you would consider going to if you were accepted. And oftentimes the interviews are in person anyways, so once you go for the interview, you can see if you like the vibe then. But someone said, all things PT school application and GRE tips, please and thank you. So I did film a video last summer that was like me reading my entire PT school application. So I talk about this pretty in depth in that video, so I will link that above. But I would say just try to make yourself stand out. Think of what every other student is going to be writing about and listing on their PT school application. Everyone had to do shadowing hours. Everyone probably has some sort of community service. Most people probably have a background in like sports. They were injured and that's what led them to physical therapy. So try to find something that makes you unique and really highlight on that in your essays and in just sort of like the extracurricular section. I was a registered behavior technician in college and worked with kids with autism and did ABA therapy with them. So I feel like that was something that was very, very unique. So I tried to touch on that a lot throughout my application. As far as the GRE goes, I took it, I believe, January of my junior year. I studied like all winter break. I think I had off like three and a half weeks. And I really just like crunched down, studied really, really hard over winter break, which obviously is hard to do. You want to be sort of relaxing and spending time with friends and family. I still made time for that, but I would spend a lot of my days just studying, working through my GRE prep book. I think I used the Kaplan book. Honestly, it doesn't even matter. Just find a GRE book, work through it, do some practice tests, practice questions, look on Quizlet for some like commonly used vocab terms, and then I would just take it and see how you do. Most schools do super score, which means say you do really good on math the first time and bad on reading, then the next time you take it, you can just not really study for the math section, just study a ton for the reading section and then combine those two scores. That's what I did. Worked out pretty well for me. So I recommend that. Someone said, first off, congrats on passing your NPTE. Do you have any regrets from PT school? And I thought about this question for a very, very long time. I feel like my PT school experience was very unique because I started summer of 2020, so COVID was sort of very new and very fresh. And I applied early decision to my school, so I like interviewed and was accepted in August of 2019, so pretty much a full year before my program started. And from the time I was accepted to the time my program started, so much happened, not just to me, to everyone. The pandemic happened. I had to leave college. I went to the University of Georgia. I had to leave, missed my graduation, moved home for almost 6 months and was living at home in Pennsylvania. And then I had to move back for grad school. And mentally, that was really, really hard for me. I have never really talked about this on my channel before, but I was never really like homesick in college, even though I was very far away. I was never really homesick, but when it came time for me to leave home after having been there for so long during the pandemic, to then go back and start a new, very demanding grad program 12 hours away in the middle of the pandemic where it's discouraged to socialize outside of class, that was very, very isolating for me. Mentally, I just really, really struggled, and I feel like I coped with that by just throwing myself into school and trying super, super hard and getting really good grades. Like, it did pay off for me. Looking back, I just put so much pressure on myself to like do super well, and I feel like it was a way for me to cope with sort of everything that was going on mentally. So if I could go back, I would just tell myself to chill out and just try to be less hard on myself. Just wish I could tell little Kristen, like, you're gonna pass, everyone in your program graduated. Well, there was one person that dropped out, but that was very early on, so don't really count that. Everyone graduated, everyone is going to be working as a physical therapist. Just have some grace with yourself. Like, you're gonna make it through. It's not that serious. If you mess up the goniometry on your first lab competency, you're not gonna fail. You just need to laugh it off and just smile and be happy. Nothing is that serious. PT school is so hard, and if you take everything so seriously, like, it's just gonna be mentally draining. So that's what I would say about that. Someone said, what were your studying strategies to avoid burnout? This might seem like counterintuitive, but studying every day helped me avoid burnout, because instead of not studying and then studying like 8 hours the day before the test, I would do like an hour or two every night, and that just kind of kept the material fresh as we were learning it. And I feel like in the long run, that helped me avoid burnout. But I will say, honestly, it's kind of impossible. You are in school for 3 years straight, through the summers, you really only have a week or two off for like spring break, Christmas, in between summer, fall, spring semesters. So you are going to have periods of times where your motivation ebbs and flows, and I definitely was feeling burnt out, especially during my second year, because first year just was so hard mentally, like I just said. So have some grace with yourself, do your best. The days where you are feeling really motivated, try to get a lot done. The days you're not feeling up to it, try to do like a little bit of something, even if it is flipping through your class notes while you're watching Netflix in bed. Just something, just a little bit that your future self will thank you for. Someone said, how did you organize your notes in PT school? So I used my iPad. I would download the PowerPoints into Notability and write directly on the slides. That worked really well for me because I feel like I could listen really well to what the professor was saying and just sort of add the most important key points. When I got to second year, there was a bunch of classes that wouldn't allow laptops because they were more sort of lab-based classes and they didn't want people like stepping on electronics. So for that, I had a binder and I would print out the PowerPoint slides. So it was very similar to what it was like with my iPad. Print out the slides, write in the margins. Absolutely love doing that. When did you start studying for the NPTE? What tools do you recommend? What was your score? I started studying for the NPTE in, I would say, the end of December for my April test date, so about January, February, March, about 4 months before the exam. If I had to recommend one thing, it would be NPTE Final Frontier. It is a 12-week program that literally teaches you everything you need to know for the NPTE. It's really a way of studying like smarter rather than harder. Not that it wasn't a lot of work, because there was 6 hours of lectures per week and a reading every single day, so I still was studying like 15-20 hours a week probably if I had to put a number on it, but they really are teaching you exactly what you need to know. You have a 2-hour lecture on pediatrics and it's like, okay, here's what you should absolutely know for the NPTE for pediatrics. And I feel like the whole program just like prepared me so well and took so much stress off of my plate. I also really liked the NPTE Clinical Files podcast by Kyle Rice. I would watch that every single time I was in the car, pretty much, like I said, from January to April. Put on a podcast episode. He reads out a practice question, goes through a bunch of answer choices, and talks about them. Also taking practice tests and going over every single question and rationale, even the ones you got right, and reviewing your answers. And my score was a 774 out of 800. Someone said tips for first DPT clinical rotations. I would say take advantage of the fact that it is your first rotation. I remember being so nervous. I sat on my parents' porch the night before. I had all of my orthopedic notes out for my outpatient ortho rotation and was literally studying every single page. And did that help me? Maybe a little bit. Did that overwhelm me? Yes, it did overwhelm me a lot. They don't expect you to know everything. They're there to help you. Whereas in your third clinical, you walk in there and they expect, okay, she's going to be a PT in 3 months. She better know what she's doing. Ask a ton of questions because especially at this point in the game, no question is a stupid question. They're just going to say, oh, it's her first clinical. Like, that makes sense. So don't take it too seriously. And also ask your clinical instructor to practice skills on them in any downtime. I swear, if we had a patient running 5 minutes late during lunch at the end of the day, anytime there was a cancel, I was like, I had a skill in my mind. Okay, I want to practice low back mobilizations, cervical spine mobilizations. I want to practice these reflexes. I would have it like geared up in my brain, and we had a free second. I would say, hey, could I try this on you really quick? And that honestly was the most beneficial thing for me. What do you think was the easiest thing you learned in PT school, and what was the most difficult? Starting with the most difficult, I feel like it's easy to say anatomy just because it's so much information and it really is like the foundation for everything else. But at least going into anatomy, you have taken A&P 1 and 2 in college. For me, I feel like neuroanatomy was the hardest. We took that second semester and I feel like some schools call it something different. But at my school, it's basically learning all the different like specific parts of the brain and tracts, and it's just very, very in-depth. And I learned nothing about that in high school or college. So learning it for the first time was like learning a foreign language, and it was really hard to find like resources online to help. So I would say neuroanatomy, with anatomy being a close second. The easiest thing you learned, I feel like our neuro lab class was pretty easy, or anything that was like acute care sort of labs, because that really is just learning how to safely sort of get a patient out of bed and transfer them. It's sort of, I don't want to say common sense because that's really downplaying it, but I just found it way easier to learn that than sort of any other skill because it made a lot of sense to me. It was very straightforward, keep the patient safe, instruct things very clearly so they understand what you're doing, and just practice and you'll do well. So I feel like that was the easiest thing. What are some tips for students who are about to finish physical therapy school? Do you have any tips on how to get through a rough placement? So I am so lucky that all 3 of my clinicals and all 3 of my clinical instructors were absolutely amazing. I know that is very uncommon, and I feel for the people who have had really tough, hard placements and are just absolutely miserable for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, however long your rotation is. But if I had to give advice, and again, I don't know if I'm the best person to give advice because I didn't have this experience, but I do have friends that have had this experience and I've talked to them about it. If it is a situation where you feel getting your director of clinical education involved would help, I definitely would recommend that. Our director of clin ed was always telling us, like, if there's something wrong, if there's something like you think I can help with, please call me, please keep me up to date in what is happening. So definitely consider like calling and getting them involved. If it's just a matter of like personality wise, you and your instructor aren't really clicking, I would say try to talk to them about it if you feel like that would help. If it's a matter of maybe they give you feedback a little harshly, saying, hey, like from now on, I would really appreciate if you gave me feedback this way. My school had like bi-weekly like forms we had to like fill out and do like self-reflections and have our clinical instructor sign. That could be a really good time to bring something up. I think one of our questions was like, what is not working well? What can be improved? And that's where you could write, I would prefer to get feedback in this way rather than this way. Try to identify why it is rough and hard and what can be sort of done to fix that. And just know this is going to make you stronger. It's going to make you a better PT in the long run. So no experience is bad experience. Just keep pushing through and make the most of every day. And tips for students about to finish school. I feel like it's really easy to sort of coast to the finish line when there's only a few weeks left, especially in clinical, but I would always tell myself this is the last time I'm going to have another PT right by my side to help me. So ask all those questions. If you're unsure about anything, ask, and really take advantage of those last few weeks and don't sort of just coast to the end. What did you enjoy most about being a physical therapy student? I feel like this might sound cliche, but I genuinely feel like I grew so much as a person in the past 3 years of physical therapy school. Just not even just the knowledge I had, but also just like the people skills, the soft skills, how to converse with people. I have learned so much that I feel like just will make me a better person in the long run. So I think that's one of my favorite things, and I absolutely loved my 3rd year, my clinical year. Just having the opportunity to make such a big impact on people's lives every single day is so amazing, and not many other careers can you say that. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? So in 10 years, I will be 34, so that is quite old and quite crazy. I definitely hope to have a house and a kid or 2 and be married by age 34. Career-wise, my big goal is to open my own clinic, and I've been trying to think a lot about it recently, like timing-wise, when that would sort of fit in the picture. And the more I'm thinking about it, I feel like that's going to be something a little later down the road once my kids are sort of like in school and grown a little bit more. I don't think I want to be running my own business when they're like super tiny, because I just want to be able to be very present for their early childhood. So tips to be better at small talk with patients during clinicals. I absolutely love this question, and I do have a lot of tips for you guys. So my go-to, if there is sort of like a lull in the conversation, like obviously the patient comes in, you're like, how are you doing? They say good. you say, how is your shoulder feeling today? Blah, 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 and ask those typical questions. And then usually there's like a lull in the conversation. So usually my go-tos are Monday through Wednesday, I say, did you do anything fun over the weekend? Wednesday to Friday, I ask, do you have any fun weekend plans coming up? That usually starts a pretty good conversation. If people have cute nails, I always comment on those. Or like a cute outfit, I'll comment on those. I just try to find sort of a common interest and just sort of pull at that common interest. If they're wearing a sweatshirt that says Penn State on it, I'll say, oh, did you go to Penn State? Oh no, my kid goes to Penn State. Oh my gosh, how many kids do you have? Just sort of try to find something and sort of pull the conversation from there. And your patients are human, so it should sort of flow naturally. Some patients aren't going to want to talk to you, and this is actually a funny story I've never shared before. One time I was trying to use my small talk conversation tactic, and the patient literally looked me in the eye, and this was in the outpatient setting, it wasn't in acute care. She looked me in the eye and said, you know, we don't have to talk. Like a few weeks into my first rotation, and I was just like, okay, and we just sat there in silence as she did her clamshells or whatever. But just know it is okay if there is some silence. Some patients might like that, clearly, as per my example, but just try to make small talk and don't take it too serious. Last question, what was your experience with imposter syndrome once graduating? I watched a recent video from Megan and Sierra. Absolutely love their channel. If either of you are watching this, I love you guys. I know it would mean the world if you commented down below and let me know that you watched this video. Sierra recently struggled with imposter syndrome, and I can imagine that since PT is such a hands-on, important medical career, the imposter syndrome might be really strong. So I don't start my job until June 26th, and that's about a month away, and I am absolutely so nervous, and imposter syndrome is huge. I feel like in every healthcare profession, but dare I say even more so in physical therapy, and I've been trying to really think about why this is. Like, why do all PT students feel such imposter syndrome? And I really do think it's a few things. I think one is we don't have like a certain set of skills, if you will, that's like, okay, I've done, like, I don't know, take nursing for example. I know how to do IV medications. I know how to insert a catheter. I know how to give a vaccine. We don't have that like clear-cut sort of like skills tasks that we can confidently look at and say, I have experience with all of that and I know how to do that. With PT, there is always more things to be learning when it comes to sort of mobilizations, different techniques, and you never know what is going to walk through your clinic door. So my very first day of treating, I might have a patient with some surgery that I've never treated before that requires certain interventions I have never learned or performed before. So you just sort of never know what is coming in, and PT school can only prepare you so much. I think another part of it is we don't have like the imaging to fall back on. We do our tests, we try to synthesize the evidence that we are finding to reach our best conclusion about what we think is going on without sort of imaging or other invasive testing to fall back on. So I think PT is just such a hard career, and I don't think I will be truly comfortable until I'm like several years into my career, but I just tell myself that I know enough. I graduated school, I did really well on the boards. I can figure out enough to do with my patient on the first session to get them through to the next session, and then on my own time research up and sort of come up with a treatment plan for them. My camera's about to die and I've been talking for a really long time, so I think that is all I'm going to answer today. But if you want to be in future Q&As, like I said, make sure you subscribe and check out my community tab, and also follow me on Instagram and be on the lookout for those question and answer polls. I love you guys so much. Thank you for supporting my channel, and I'll talk to you in my next video. Bye!